if it's the season for Shavuos, so believe it or not, it's also the season where the baseball season is beginning to heat up. And if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about baseball for a couple minutes. Okay?
Because it's only because
Vladimir said he only talks about soccer. I don't know much about soccer. I once I went to watch a soccer game, I fell asleep. I never went back. So.
Schneider, you're choosing baseball because Maple Leafs didn't make it.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
If anybody knows about baseball, and I'm talking more traditionally there was a very big philosophical difference between the American League and the National League when it comes to baseball. The National League traditionally was more of the old school type, and their philosophy of winning a baseball game was you get a guy on base any way you can, be it a walk, be it a bunt single. You sacrifice to the left side of the infield to get him to second base, maybe you steal a base, and little by little by little, you try and get as many runs as you can. Traditionally, that's how the National League played baseball. It's called small ball. The American League is known more for what's called the 3-run homer. They're not looking for little plays. They want to get a big slugger up to the plate, get a couple guys on base, and you're going to look for the big play to win the game. So as we approach this holiday of Shavuos, which talks about our acceptance of the Torah, I wanted to discuss, as Jews, is our strategy small ball like the National League, or is our strategy big play like the American League? Rabbi Akiva was one of the authors in the Mishnah, 2nd century, right after the destruction of the Second Temple. And famously, Rabbi Akiva, who was one of the biggest scholars, as David mentioned last week, our whole svira, the mourning that we've been doing was because of the students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's, the Torah that we have today, all stems from Rabbi Akiva. And famously, Rabbi Akiva did not learn Torah, or didn't learn much Torah, until he was 40 years old. Rabbi Akiva was known to be a shepherd. He'd spend time with the sheep, and he was one time with his sheep, and he saw a rock that had a big hole in it. He noticed that there was water dripping on the rock. The rock had a big hole. And at 40 years old, he had this inspiration. He said, if water can make a hole in a rock, then certainly Torah can make a hole in my heart. He left his sheep. He began with the Aleph Beis at 40 years old. And he ended up learning lots and lots of Torah. And all the Torah that we have comes from Rabbi Akiva. And the question that's posed is, what in the world did Rabbi Akiva see down at that rock that so inspired him? In fact, he had spent much time with sheep. I'm sure he had seen rocks with holes in it. What hit him down there that made him decide that he wanted to learn Torah? So the answer is given that we have a little misconception in the story of Rabbi Akiva. We were taught, some of us, that Rabbi Akiva never ever learned Torah until he was 40 years old. And it's not true. Rabbi Akiva learned Torah, and he went and he learned, and it was fantastic. He loved it. And he came back a second day, and he learned more Torah, and it was awesome. And then he came on the third day, and he learned. Maybe the weather wasn't so nice outside, maybe his chavrusa wasn't terrific, and Rabbi Akiva felt nothing. He did not connect with the Torah. And being a very practical man, Rabbi Akiva said, if it's possible that there's one day that I'm not enjoying my Torah, if it's not doing something for me, so it must be a zero. It must be that there's no sense in learning Torah. And therefore, he said, he's going to go and shepherd the sheep. When Rabbi Akiva saw the rock, he understood an incredible math equation, and that is that 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 can equal a big hole in the rock. Because if you would take a microscope, and you would take that first drop of water, and you would get the most intense microscope, you would see nothing. There would be no impression on the rock. 0. And the second drop, and the third drop, and the fourth drop. But when you have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of zeros over time, each little non-impression, you end up with a big hole. So from the story of Rabbi Akiva, we learn two very important lessons. First of all, imagine what would happen if instead of dripping that water little by little by little, slowly over time, somebody would have taken all that water and dumped it at the rock at one time. So you'd have one thing, a big flood, but you wouldn't have a hole. The big play does not work. It might work for the American League, it might work in baseball, but the big play in life does not work. The other thing that we have to realize is is that even if something feels like a zero, and this was the lesson that Rabbi Akiva learned, a zero does not mean a zero. For a person to be successful, he needs to have a collection of small moments, whether it be in his learning, certainly of Torah, little by little by little by little by little. It happens sometimes somebody prays to God, and one time he feels a real strong connection. And the next time he comes in and he doesn't feel the same connection. And he thinks to himself, it must have been a fake the last time. And it's not true. That's what we learned from Rabbi Akiva. Not every experience that we're going to have with people, and certainly with God, not every time is it going to be something that we're going to feel at the same intensity. But if we realize that the same way each one of those non-impressions on the rock will add up with a collection and it's going to make a big impression, so we would stick with it. We would say, okay, this time it felt less, but I know that over time it's going to make that big impression. And as we approach the receiving of the Torah, we have to remember this lesson, that we have to take things step by step. We have to go little by little, and hopefully after time, we will have that big impression on our hearts.
Thank you.